Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story takes us deep into the skies over the Caribbean, where a dramatic and unexpected encounter between a Venezuelan fighter jet and a U.S. F-35 shocked the entire world. What began as a standard patrol mission quickly turned into a heart-stopping confrontation that tested the limits of both skill and technology. And while the skies erupted in chaos, the ripple effects of this event extended all the way to the Black Sea, where the Crimea Bridge faced yet another devastating strike that's left Russia reeling. This is one of those rare moments where two major military incidents reveal just how unstable global tensions have become. It all began with a U.S. Navy carrier group conducting routine operations near international waters close to Venezuela. These waters have become a constant source of tension, with American naval forces monitoring drug routes, smuggling activity, and potential threats from regional militaries aligned with adversarial powers. On board the carrier USS George Washington, a squadron of F-35 Sea Lightning Roman IIs was tasked with conducting surveillance missions along the edge of Venezuelan airspace. It was supposed to be routine, a few hours in the air, standard intelligence collection, then a quiet return to the deck. But as history would show, that flight would become one of the most dramatic air encounters of the decade. Inside the cockpit of one of the F-35's, sensors picked up fast, approaching aircraft moving from the west. It was a pair of Venezuelan F-16s, aging but still dangerous fighters, supported by ground radar from the Venezuelan Air Defense Command. The pilots had been ordered to intercept what they called unauthorized aerial presence near their sovereign airspace. Tensions between Washington and Caracas have flared for years, especially as Venezuela deepens ties with both Russia and Iran. So when the F-16s appeared on radar, it was not entirely unexpected, but what happened next was anything but normal. The Venezuelan fighters began aggressive maneuvers, locking radar onto the American jets. U.S. pilots issued radio warnings asserting that they were operating in international airspace. The response was silence. Moments later, one Venezuelan jet broke formation, flying dangerously close to the lead F-35. The American pilot attempted evasive maneuvers, but the Venezuelan fighter continued to close the gap. Then, in a shocking and reckless act, the Venezuelan jet physically rammed the F-35's wingtip, sending both aircraft spinning out of control. The mid-air collision sent shockwaves through the command room on the carrier below. The F-35 pilot, relying on advanced stabilization systems, managed to regain partial control, while the Venezuelan fighter burst into flames. The pilot ejected just seconds before the jet exploded in a fiery trail that was visible from the coastline. The American F-35, though heavily damaged, limped toward the carrier. Navy rescue teams scrambled helicopters, and within minutes, the pilot was safely back on deck. The footage captured by onboard cameras quickly went viral, igniting a firestorm of debate across the globe. Inside Venezuela, state media accused the U.S. of violating their airspace and provoking the encounter. American officials denied the allegations, presenting radar data showing the U.S. jet had remained outside Venezuela's borders. But the world was left stunned by the fact that a pilot had intentionally rammed one of the world's most advanced fighter jets. Analysts speculated that the Venezuelan pilot might have acted under political pressure, or perhaps panicked during a high-speed close approach. Either way, it marked a dramatic escalation in military brinkmanship. The interior of the F-35 cockpit tells the story of survival through technology. The aircraft's advanced damage control systems and fly-by-wire adjustments allowed it to stay airborne despite losing part of its wing. Engineers later said that this incident proved why the F-35 remains unmatched when it comes to electronic stability and resilience under pressure. The short but intense flight back to the carrier was nothing short of a miracle, as the pilot maintained control using limited thrust and asymmetric aerodynamics to safely touch down on the deck. Performance-wise, this incident became a live demonstration of the F-35's superiority. While critics have long questioned its cost and complexity, moments like this silence the debate. Despite taking physical damage, the jet's systems continued to function, radar remained operational, and communication links stayed stable. The Venezuelan F-16, by comparison, stood no chance once the collision occurred. It's a stark reminder of the technological gap between older 4th generation fighters and modern stealth platforms like the F-35. In the days following the collision, Washington lodged a formal protest with the Venezuelan government, demanding accountability. At the same time, the Pentagon increased aerial patrols in the region, supported by Navy destroyers and surveillance aircraft. Meanwhile, intelligence sources revealed something even more concerning. Venezuelan radar operators had been coordinating with Russian advisors stationed at an airbase near Maracay. This revelation deepened suspicions that the event may not have been accidental at all. As the investigation continued, global attention shifted thousands of miles away of the Black Sea, where yet another explosion rocked the already embattled Crimea Bridge. Satellite images showed the massive structure once again engulfed in flames after a suspected Ukrainian drone boat attack. The strike was precise and devastating, cutting off key Russian supply lines to Crimea and southern Ukraine. The timing could not have been worse for Moscow, which was already struggling with logistics and morale. The connection between these two incidents may seem distant, but analysts noticed a pattern. As U.S. and Allied forces increased pressure on Russian influence worldwide, new fronts of instability began emerging, from Latin America to Eastern Europe. The Venezuelan fighters' reckless act seemed to echo Russia's increasingly desperate attempts to project power through its allies. In both cases, the consequences were catastrophic and unpredictable. Back in Washington, the Pentagon issued a carefully worded statement emphasizing restraint, but also reaffirming America's commitment to defending international airspace. Defense experts warned that any further aggression could trigger a rapid escalation. NATO allies quietly supported the U.S. position, sending reconnaissance assets to monitor Venezuelan movements, while Russia condemned what it called Western provocation. The world was once again split along familiar Cold War lines. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of the Crimea Bridge strike, Russia scrambled to repair the damage while downplaying the scale of destruction. Drone footage circulating online showed sections of the bridge collapsed into the water, with trucks and vehicles stranded on broken spans. For Ukraine, it was a major symbolic victory, demonstrating that no Russian target was beyond reach. For Russia, it was a humiliating reminder that its defenses remain vulnerable despite billions spent on protection. As both stories unfolded, global markets reacted sharply. Oil prices surged due to fears of instability near Venezuelan waters, while European energy traders braced for another wave of supply disruptions from Russia. Diplomats worked overtime to prevent the situation from spiraling into wider conflict, but beneath the surface, military planners were already preparing for the next move. The U.S. Navy redeployed additional assets to the Caribbean, including P-8 Poseidon surveillance planes and a second carrier strike group to maintain deterrence. What made the Midair incident especially shocking was the footage later declassified by the Pentagon. The video showed the Venezuelan jet closing in at an angle of less than 20 feet before impact, a maneuver described by one veteran pilot as suicidal. The contact lasted less than a second, but the result was catastrophic. Analysts studying the footage suggested that the Venezuelan aircraft's radar lock warning might have malfunctioned, causing confusion and panic in the cockpit. Others speculated that the pilot may have been attempting a dangerous intimidation pass that went horribly wrong. For the F-35 pilot, it was a moment of split-second decision-making. He later recounted that all alarms went off simultaneously as the impact occurred, and the cockpit filled with smoke and sparks. Training and instinct took over. The onboard AI-assisted systems automatically stabilized the plane, preventing an immediate spin-out. The pilot credited the aircraft's design for saving his life, saying that no other jet could have survived that kind of collision and stayed controllable. In the following weeks, the story became a global sensation. News outlets debated whether this marked the start of a new kind of aerial confrontation, where outdated jets in the hands of desperate regimes become weapons of political theater. The incident was also used by U.S. lawmakers to justify expanding naval operations in the Western Hemisphere, calling for greater readiness against proxy provocations. Venezuelan officials, however, remained defiant, accusing the of intimidation and threatening to deploy Russian-made missile systems along the coast. Across the ocean, the Crimea Bridge strike continued to haunt the Russian military. Satellite imagery confirmed that at least 2 major support pillars had been destroyed, effectively rendering the bridge unusable for weeks. This strike, likely carried out using Ukraine's newly modified maritime drones, underscored a shift in modern war. Where small, unmanned systems can deliver devastating blows to billion-dollar infrastructures. Russia vowed revenge, but its options were limited as its forces struggled to maintain control over the front lines. Both these incidents, the Venezuelan fighter collision and the Crimea Bridge strike, painted a clear picture of a world edging closer to unpredictable chaos. Superpowers and their allies were now entangled in a complex web of regional conflicts, each testing the boundaries of deterrence and response. For ordinary people, these events served as stark reminders that the balance of peace can be shattered in an instant by a single reckless action. The U.S. Navy, for its part, continues to adapt. After the collision, engineers used the damaged F-35 to study how its structure handled impact stress, leading to potential upgrades for future variants. Training simulations are also being revised to include scenarios involving unpredictable close encounters with hostile aircraft. It's a sobering acknowledgement that not all threats come in the form of missiles. Sometimes, the danger is human error or desperation. As for Venezuela, the loss of one of its few operational fighters and the international backlash that followed left it politically isolated. While some allies offered words of support, most nations condemned the pilot's actions. Economically, the fallout deepened Venezuela's already dire crisis as sanctions tightened and foreign investors pulled back. Militarily, its air force remains grounded for review, with the government promising reforms that few believe will materialize. The F-35, now repaired and back in service, has become a symbol of endurance, both for the technology it represents and the geopolitical resolve it embodies. The pilot who survived the collision has since returned to duty, though he remains a quiet hero within naval aviation circles. His story has already become part of modern aviation lore, a moment when skill, machine, and fate converged in the skies above the Caribbean. In the end, the world moves on, but the echoes of these events linger. A Venezuelan fighter ramming a U.S. jet was not just a reckless act, it was a spark in a growing storm of military tension spanning continents, and the destruction of the Crimea Bridge only added fuel to that storm, showing how fragile global stability truly is. The seas are tense, the skies are restless, and nations are preparing for whatever comes next. One can only hope that cooler heads prevail before these isolated clashes ignite something far greater.